All right, today we're talking about 5 of the most legendary startup investments in Indian history. And we're not just going to look at the numbers. We're diving deep into the stories behind them, the conviction, the crazy risks, and the huge impact they had on, well, everything. Let's get right into it. So let's kick things off with a simple question. What actually makes an investment legendary? I mean, is it just about the crazy returns, turning a few lakhs into thousands of crores, or is it something more? As you're about to see, it's so often about belief, perfect timing, and an impact that just keeps on giving for years and years. In this quote right here, it's about one of the investments we're going to cover, and it just nails it. A legendary investment isn't just a smart move, it's a bold bet. It's a move that doesn't just change the game for one company, it changes the game for an entire industry. Okay, let's start our countdown with numbers 5 and 4. We're calling this section the first believers, and these stories are all about the incredible power of that very first check. The one somebody writes when an idea is just, well, an idea, and pretty much no one else is willing to take that risk. All right, for our number 5 spot, let's jump in a time machine. The year is 2015. Remember 2015? The whole geo thing hadn't happened yet, so data was super expensive. And in that environment, you've got 3 founders who want to build this internet platform for, well, everything. Electricians, carpenters, you name it. A business model that, by the way, hadn't really been proven anywhere else in the world. And just look at this outcome. Kunal Bahal and Rohit Bansal, they're the ones who wrote that first check, just 57 lakh rupees. Fast forward 9 years, and they exit with 111 crores. That's a return of almost 200 times their money. The numbers are just staggering. But here's the real kicker. The impact was way, way bigger than just the money. That first check proved that this was a business solving a huge problem for Indian consumers. And maybe even more important, it was like a giant flashing sign for the big VCs that said, hey, this is a real opportunity over here. That single check basically paved the way for everything else. Okay, coming in at number 4, we're rewinding the clock even further, all the way back to 2011. So you've got this angel investor, Anupa Mittal. He gets pitched an idea for a cab-hailing service, and his first reaction? No. He just didn't think it was that big of a problem. But then, he has this one super frustrating experience trying to hail a taxi in Delhi, and it completely flips a switch in his head. He literally calls the founder right back and invests 30 lakhs for about 5% of this tiny little startup called Ola. Now, what's so wild here is the estimated gain. Between selling some of his shares and what he still holds, that 30 lakh bet has ballooned into an estimated gain of somewhere between 500 and 1,000 crore rupees. It's just unbelievable. Let's just let that sink in for a second. We're talking about a potential return of over 1,500x, 1,500 times his money. It's easily one of the greatest angel investments in India's history, and it all started because of one bad taxi ride. All right, now we're going to shift gears a little bit. We've talked about these incredible angel investors, but our next 2 stories, numbers 3 and 2, they're about something different. They're about the immense power of big institutions and strategic money. These aren't just investments that funded a company. These are investments that helped build entire industries from the ground up. So our number 3 story is really unique. This wasn't a VC fund or a lone angel investor. This was Hero MotoCorp, a legacy giant in the auto world, partnering up with Ather Energy, a young, scrappy EV startup. This was less about just an investment and more about 2 companies deciding to build the future of mobility together. And as you can see here, Hero's involvement was so much more than just cash. They jumped in with critical support for manufacturing, for marketing, for sales, basically helping Ather go from being a cool R&D project to a company that could actually produce vehicles for the mass market. They brought the industrial muscle that Ather desperately needed to scale up. And that's exactly why this one is so important. It was one of the very first times a traditional Indian giant partnered up with a startup this deeply. It basically created the blueprint for how these kinds of collaborations could work in the future. And you could argue it played a massive role in kickstarting the whole 2-wheeler EV ecosystem in India. All right, you ready for number 2? Let's fire up that time machine one more time. The year is 2008. India's e-commerce market? It's totally untested. Nobody knows if it'll work. And Flipkart? It's just a tiny team of 8 people working out of an apartment in Bangalore. It's kind of hard to even imagine now, but that was the reality back then. And this is when Excel, a huge global VC firm, made that bold bet we talked about at the very beginning. They wrote a $1 million seed check. Over the next decade, they put in about $60 to $80 million in total. And when Walmart bought Flipkart in 2018, Excel walked away with about $2 billion. That's a 30x return on all the money they put in. Incredible. But again, you know the drill by now. The money is only half the story. The really crucial thing here is that this single investment was a massive turning point. It sent a signal to the entire world that India was ready for huge internet companies. It brought in other giants like Tiber Global, and it basically opened the floodgates, kickstarting the modern venture capital industry in India as we know it today. And that, my friends, brings us to number one. And I'll tell you right now, this is not just a story about a great financial return. This is the story of the ultimate partnership. It's what happens when you combine long-term, patient capital with deep, hands-on mentorship right from day one. So, when Sanjeev Vikchandani from InfoEdge first meets the founder of this little restaurant discovery website, his very first piece of advice is simple. He says, change the company's name. See, the startup was called Foodie Bay. And Sanjeev knew right away that name was just too small for the vision. Right then and there, it was clear this was going to be way more than just an investment. And what came next was just a masterclass in conviction. Look at this timeline. InfoEdge didn't just invest once and call it a day. Nope, they led Zomato's funding rounds year after year after year, pouring in more and more money, doubling down on their commitment, even when other VCs were kind of skeptical about the whole food tech space.
And right here, this is the incredible result of all that mentorship and belief. A total investment of around 147 crores, guided by Sanjeev's deep experience in the consumer internet world, has turned into a total gain of around 40,000 crores. It is the ultimate testament to the power of having a true strategic partner, not just an investor.
Just let that number sink in. 40,000 crores. It is, without a doubt, one of the single largest creations of value in the entire history of Indian startups. And it was all built on a foundation of unwavering belief and a decade of solid guidance. So, okay, we've just walked through 5 absolutely incredible stories. What's the takeaway here? What's the actual blueprint for a legendary, truly impactful investment? Well, it really seems to boil down to 4 key ingredients. First, you need that early conviction, believing before anyone else does, just like we saw with Urban Company and Ola. Second, you have to be backing founders who are solving a real nagging problem. Then there's that strategic firepower, right? Giving more than just money, the way Hero did for Ather. And finally, that deep mentorship, which was clearly the secret sauce in the whole InfoEdge and Zomato story. You know, these 5 investments really helped write the story of the last decade of innovation in India. They built iconic companies and sparked entire new industries. And that leaves us with one final pretty exciting question to think about. What's going to be the next legendary investment story that makes it onto this list? Thanks for joining me.